Dale Wilcox, who is the Executive Director and General Counsel for the Immigration Reform Law Institute, which is a public interest law firm that advocates for immigration policies that serve the American people and our national interest. Dale, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Dale, I understand that you guys at the Immigration Reform Law Institute are taking some interest in what's going on here in California. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, actually, we're tomorrow filing two briefs in the United States versus California lawsuit, wherein the U.S. government is challenging California's new sanctuary state laws. I'm happy to report that there actually exist California elected officials who care about the safety and security of their constituents and the good people of California. So there are several cities, elected officials, even a U.S. representative joining our brief tomorrow that we're going to file tomorrow evening.
Now, just amazing. How is this going to, so tell us a little bit more about how this will benefit the folks in California, these MAGA folks that are out there that are trying to get some attention to this issue. Walk us through that a little bit.
You have, sadly, the supermajority in Sacramento legislating for the rest of the state and imposing these laws that are clearly unconstitutional and violate the Supremacy Clause and are not in the best interests of Californians, but solely in the best interests of illegal aliens and criminals. Various cities around the state are saying, we've had enough. We're not going to put up with this. So the United States has filed suit, and the court has allowed interested friend of the court parties to file briefs, and tomorrow's the deadline for those who are supporting the United States government. So we are filing two briefs. One brief will be on behalf of several municipalities, and I can announce on your show tonight a few of those. Yorba Linda, Mission Viejo, and Escondido are all joining our brief, in addition to U.S. Representative Dana Rohrabacher. And their brief is going to focus on how the state of California has overstepped its bounds and has put them in a really tough situation. Not only are they endangering their constituents, but they've put them in a situation where they potentially could be violating federal law, harboring laws, concealing laws by not cooperating with ICE and hiding from ICE when their local jails are going to release someone, even though ICE has asked that they be notified or transfer someone to ICE who is a wanted, criminal. So these municipalities are not going to stand by and put up with what's going on in Sacramento. We're also filing a second brief on behalf of the National Sheriff's Association, who obviously has an interest, and the California sheriffs being able to assist, cooperate with the federal government and immigration enforcement. And federal law contemplates this cooperation and asks for it. We're also representing in that brief the group ASIAC, which stands for Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime, which is a group that is composed of, sadly, parents and spouses, people left behind, where illegal aliens have murdered their loved ones. And there's another group, Fight Sanctuary State, which is another victims group, who's joining that brief. So I'm happy to say that the people, the good people of California, are rising up and saying enough, and they're going to challenge the state and these laws that were passed last year that were clearly passed to thwart immigration and turning over criminal aliens to ICE.
How have we gotten here? We've went from, I'm a California native, and it wasn't that long ago that Prop 187 passed here resoundingly, which basically was a bill that passed that wouldn't allow, I believe it was, welfare for illegal immigrants. We are now at a point where the state itself is just basically welcoming illegal immigration here. You have Kevin De Leon who showed up to West Covina, I think because he didn't want West Covina to be the first Los Angeles County city to go against SB 54. How did we get here? How is this even now part of the conversation?
It's interesting. If you go back to just 10 years ago and you look at statements by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, 1996 State of the Union stood up and said illegal aliens and illegal immigration, and you actually use those terms, were a threat to this country. Why has it changed? Well, sadly, for political gain. The Democrats have formed this vision that through identity politics they can transform and gain power and create these voting blocks, and so they have just opened the doors to illegal immigration. I mean, you're absolutely right. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this would have never happened. The good people of California passed Prop 187. They stood up for what was right, the rule of law, and what was good and proper for the citizens of California. Instead, now it's all about political gain. It's about power. And it's also about money, as we see with this recent lawsuit that California has filed regarding the census, including a question on the census questionnaire regarding, are you a citizen? And if you're not, have you been naturalized? Are you kidding me? We've had that question on our census form since 1820. So it's all about political power. It's a ploy.
It's amazing. The thing that's really disturbing also, and I believe Attorney General Sessions cited this in his case taking California's sanctuary state laws, basically suing us or taking us to federal court or whatever. I believe he mentioned the situation where the Attorney General of California is threatening employers here that if they report to ICE, if they work with our federal immigration officials to report people here who are here illegally or try to cooperate with ICE in their raids, that he'll throw these employers in jail. This is astonishing. So what federal law do we deal with? Do we deal with, what law do we comply with? Do we comply with the federal government or the state government? Or this is where it's completely ridiculous for a Californian.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the law you're referring to is one of the three laws that's being challenged in the United States lawsuit is so-called the Immigrant Worker Protection Act, AB 450. Get that, the Immigrant Worker Protection Act. So basically, private employers are prohibited under California law from allowing ICE on their premises in non-public areas. They cannot cooperate with ICE, voluntarily cooperate. They've taken that away. And, of course, federal law requires or authorizes federal agents to enter places of employment and do spot checks and raids and whatnot. So it clearly conflicts with federal law. And we anticipate it's going to be struck down. But think about what is Sacramento thinking here? It's clearly an attempt to assist unlawful employment. We have federal laws against that. Why are they not thinking about their citizens and legal residents who they're unemployed citizens and legal residents? Why are they taking the side of illegal aliens? It makes no sense.
Well, the 1986 amnesty was passed on the premise that employers had to enforce, or look for whether their employees were legal or not. So it just seems like it's such a pretzel twist to get new voters in and to gain more power and what have you.
Yeah, especially
You're
when
absolutely right. Yeah.
Especially when the communities that are hurt the most by us not coordinating with ICE are usually, Black and Hispanic communities that get hurt the most by, the crime, and also get hurt the most by the jobs that are taken away. the unfair competition. I just don't understand why we are not helping our own folks.
Well, construction here in Los Angeles went from 20% Hispanic in the 70s to now being in the 70 percentile. And that's working class jobs. People were able to buy houses from having those kinds of jobs. And it completely transformed both the construction and the landscaping business. And I just don't see how these legislatures continue to get away with this and think this was the thing that got Donald Trump into office was immigration. There's nothing more that he campaigned on than handling this problem, putting up the wall, and dealing with this. And it's a winning issue for Republicans as far as I can see.
Dale, while we have you here, let me ask you about the situation that we see on our border with this caravan of it looks like economic migrants from Central America coming up through Mexico to seek asylum, basically at one of our ports of entry into our country. They're technically not planning on an illegal border crossing. They're planning on doing this completely legally. And as the immigration law reformer that you are, what do you make of this situation?
Well, but first of all, I think it's despicable because this has been organized by a open borders group here called People Without Borders. And what they're doing is they were trying to bring attention to the plight of these people in Honduras. I think 80% of the individuals in the caravan were from Honduras, and instead, what they've done is they've set off a kind of a domino effect, showing that how porous our border is and how in need we are of border enforcement. And they've only proven the president right. And of course, it might have precipitated the president using the National Guard now to go down to the border. So I think it's backfired on them, but I think it's despicable because they have purposefully gathered these people together and marched them up toward our border with the intent of getting here, and surely have coached them on what to say. And the magic words are, I have a credible fear of persecution in my country. And then they automatically, under our law, if they have entered the United States, if they actually make it across the border, they say that magic word, and then they must be given a credible fear hearing by an immigration law judge. So it is disturbing what's going on and how our system's being abused, and it certainly needs to be remedied. And I mean, there are several things the president can do. I mean, he has powers under the Immigration and Nationality Act to suspend all entry into the country, INA 212F, which was used in the travel ban case. He has several other powers under the INA where he can deputize state and local officials to assist in immigration enforcement when there's a mass influx like this. And, you know, hopefully they will facilitate immigration judges going down to the border so that we can expedite those hearings, because what happens is they come across, they claim asylum, we have to give them a hearing, we don't have enough space, we have to release them into the public, and guess what? They don't show up for their hearing. They just disappear into the interior. So it is a real issue, and I'm glad to see the president taking the steps that he's taking and getting the National Guard involved.
Now, you mentioned that they don't show up for their hearings. They request asylum, and we have to take the asylum claim seriously. Now, what's troubling is that they're coming, Mexico is happily helping them up to our border, although they're coming from further south in Central America. We have, from my understanding, is that we have a third safe country agreement with Canada, where if somebody who's seeking refugee or a refuge or an asylum person seeking asylum, if they come in through Canada, they're supposed to request for asylum there. They can't asylum shop, come to us because we're a nicer place. These migrants should be requesting asylum in Mexico, not coming up to our border. Why do we not have an agreement like that with Mexico, the same sort of agreement that we have with Canada?
Very good question. We need it. We absolutely need it. I mean, if they're seeking refuge, refugee law states that you're supposed to go to the country closest to you where you're not being persecuted. And if you find a place of refuge, if you stop off in a place where there's no persecution, you should be applying for refugee status there. Well, they're marching up through Mexico. Do you think Mexico is going to stop them? Mexico has an interest in messing with President Trump and causing instability in the United States. So they're not going to assist us. I mean, there have been reports that they've deported maybe 400 of the people in the caravan. But they're giving them, what I've read is they're giving them passes or permits so that they can hang around in Mexico, I guess, until they decide where they're to move north.
Exactly. It seems like it's one of those wink, wink, nods, nods. I'm sorry, I mentioned the thing that I'm looking for that we need to establish is safe third country. I think I bungled that a little bit, the agreement that we have with Canada. But and it does seem as if basically Mexico's doing a number on us because they're saying, oh, yeah, we disbanded it. But really what they're doing is taking it out of the public spotlight. But these folks are just going to quietly move again once they're not really disbanded. They're sort of quasi-disbanded, I guess you could say, but they're still making their way up, and they're making it very intelligently. They're going, I believe, towards the Tijuana port of entry instead of going towards Texas, where they would hit. The cartels that control that area of the border are very violent, and they would definitely charge a lot of money. I mean, it just seems as if the other thing that I wanted to touch on with you is we do not take seriously these cartels. That, to me, is really troubling. And our next guest that we're going to have on after you is Brandon Darby, our Breitbart Texas editor. He's been hammering this issue for a long time, that we're not serious about the push factors of why these people are coming up, why people from Mexico are trying to get here, which is the cartels that control these countries, and in Mexico in particular. And we instead of helping our law enforcement crack down on these cartels, we instead, have diplomatic pressure, or we are more concerned about the diplomatic relationship with Mexico instead of the fact that these cartels are just violent terrorist organizations essentially. Do you see ever any attempt to change that relationship where we really crack down on these cartels?
It would require Mexico's help, and there again. How much help are they really going to offer us? Certainly, we can crack down on our side of the border, and I'm hoping that with the National Guard assistance, we'll do a better job at that. But, Mexico needs to come to the table. They need to be serious about this. But there's, quite frankly, there's a lot of corruption and people bought on that side of the border by the cartels. And you're absolutely right. Crime is... as a result of these cartels is just the impact is staggering. And with these caravans and human smuggling in general, they advertise to individuals who might have an inclination to come over to the United States, that they will help them in that. That's one of their biggest sources of income, human smuggling. So
yes.
I mean, it's important that we, like with this caravan, we put a stop to this and not let this continue, because it only strengthens the cartels.
Yeah, I think that people forget that the big push for these unaccompanied minors that happened in 2014, when it really hit, a maximum number on our border, the unaccompanied minor crisis. Part of the reason for that was that the cartels suddenly were making more money with allowing people to cross through the border. They were charging that. And so it was like it was more lucrative than the drug trade for them. So it was a money issue. This is where the cartels were making profit by pushing people through. So, I mean, it all seems intricately, wound together as this puzzle that we're trying constantly to try to beat down and but sometimes it seems as if we're not addressing the root cause. But at the same time, I want to thank you, Dale Wilcox, for what you and your organization is doing, especially what you're doing for us folks here in California, helping us out. And Dale, tell people where they can get in, learn more about your organization and find out what you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. You can come to our website, www.irli.org, and our acronym is pronounced IRLI, by the way. Or you can find us on Twitter at IRLI Law, and you can search for us on Facebook under the Immigration Reform Law Institute.
That's right. IRLI. Thank you so much, Dale Wilcox. I really appreciate you coming on the program and always breaking down these complex legal issues for us.